Always fascinating that in the small groups, there can be like a very common theme. A small group I was observing here a few minutes ago had a lot of very interwoven themes. So my inclination is to address some of that in the talk. Um, to start with, I think it may be helpful to talk a little bit about self-inquiry, the method of self-inquiry, what it means, what it doesn't mean, what its purpose is. So self-inquiry, I'm going to speak about it somewhat broadly here. There are different teachings, of course, including one by Ramana Maharshi in his book Who Am I, that is sort of used to directly confront and deconstruct the false, separate feeling self, challenge it, confront it. Self-inquiry in that way of speaking can be used to approach that first awakening, first shift, and show. But there are a lot of nuances to it, actually, that can be very useful down the line, for sure, even after awakening and when you're moving through deep shadow material and so forth. And there are a lot of ways to talk about self-inquiry, and I've talked about it in many different ways myself. But here I think I'm going to jump in by describing how it often is approached or comes out during a satsang or a Q&A session with a group. And this is very, very common, a very common way this plays out. It would be someone will start to describe their experience and come upon something in their description that is not, and again, it's not just the description that they're coming upon, but they're coming upon a physical experience or maybe an emotional experience, but it's something down here. It's not up here. And then in describing it, it becomes clear that they've reached the level of their exploration of their experience in the moment at which they're starting to identify, at which a false identity structure is operating. This may be not obvious to the person speaking or the group, but it may be. But it's often hopefully it's obvious to the facilitator. And it sort of feels like someone describing, okay, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then there's this, and then there's this thought, and there's this feeling, and then like this barrier, something stops there. Like, I want to say something doesn't want to proceed beyond it, but it's almost as if something doesn't believe it can proceed beyond it. It's like, okay, that's the bottom. That's the bottom of where I'm at right now. That's the bottom of my experience. And that may correlate with a kind of fear. It may correlate with a doubt. And it may correlate with like confusion. But it often has some kind of emotional component. Now, it doesn't always have an emotional component, or it doesn't always have an obvious emotional component, because it can also correlate with a kind of dissociation. A sort of feeling of going off the map, but not in a good way, not in a comfortable way, in a way that feels dysphoric. Maybe more along the lines of the confusion lane of experiencing. But regardless of what associated emotion or dissociative experience is occurring, it's usually pretty obvious that something's holding there. Something's like, okay, that's it. We're not going any farther. And then it's kind of the facilitator's job to go a little, take that person a little farther. See if they can go a little farther. See if they want to go a little farther. See if what happens when they try to go a little farther. And with the maturity of the facilitator, feeling into how much they can handle in that moment. Because having been in that situation many, many times with people, I find it's important to gauge what people can handle in that moment, and or how much hand holding they need as they walk over that edge. But one way or another, somebody's in that situation of a satsang situation and asking that question and getting to some kind of barrier, the vast majority of times they're ready to ease over that barrier somehow. If they weren't, they wouldn't be here, generally speaking. Or if they're just really dysregulated or completely overwhelmed, then I wouldn't necessarily walk them over that edge. But essentially, that's what we're doing. We're just saying, okay, well, let's keep exploring a little deeper. And this isn't magic. This isn't enlightened person insider knowledge. It's just experience. It's just the experience here, or the experience with your facilitator, that they have realized that their bandwidth for experience, emotion, tension, resistance, fear, anger, confusion, all of it, they realize their bandwidth is far more than they ever thought it was before. And so you could say their comfort zone in all these spaces is pretty wide open. And that's why they can take you they can take you to where you want to go, or even are hesitant to go, but is kind of the next step. And they can sort of bring you into that bandwidth with them. You're kind of borrowing their nervous system in a sense to go where you're just a little stuck, and to go beyond that, to what's beyond the stuckness, what's beyond the fixation. People sometimes have asked me what is my method of teaching, or actually what they'll say is, oh, the way you teach is this, and I'm like, I don't have a way of teaching for sure. I know I don't, because that's not what I do. I may say this or that comes from a certain model or background or map or something, but that's just practical in the moment. The way this works for me is I feel fixation. And if I feel fixation, I walk with that person beyond that fixation, or show them how to explore and dissolve that fixation, or challenge it, or confront it, or inquire into it, whatever feels relevant, and or whatever works. So I don't always know what's going to work. Sometimes we have to try different things. But that's what this is about for me. What works seems to work, and what seems to, regardless of how it looks on the surface, that's what seems to be happening. Is we reach a fixation point, and from the standpoint of realization, from the standpoint of enlightenment, from the standpoint of the unborn, unbound, undying, there is no fixation. You will find no fixation. You will never find anything fixed. You will never find anything formed, actually. You will never find anything that's not free. And so this is always good news, that we can investigate a fixation. We can inquire into a fixation. We can feel into a fixation, and we can move through it. And there's always more freedom on the other side. And often there's also more fixation on the other side, because as you move through one fixation, you'll find others. As you incorporate one repressed emotional energy or state, you'll realize there are others. The lost children knock on the door. Like once they realize that you're going to open the door, they start knocking. So it is true that once you start opening these gates, more can come through. It can come through in a lot of ways. It can come through emotionally. It can come through energetically, kundalini and so forth. It can come through. It can come through all kinds of ways. But the process is the same each time, essentially, and that is, what is the fixation? Where's the holding? And is it even there? Feels like it's there. Feels real. Feels like I'm stuck. Feels like I've been doing this thing I'm describing to my facilitator for the last 10 years or 20 years. I feel like I'm in that cycle. I'm sure that's my story. Like, that feels real, right? And then we look a little closer, and we're like, how real is that? How real is that? Sometimes the terminology is that's the story or the narrative. And it's not just a story, it's not just a narrative. There's more to it, right? There's a buy-in, there's an energetic to it, and so forth. But inquiry, self-inquiry, in the way I'm going to talk about it today, is a really good way to investigate that. So the way this comes up often in these groups, small groups, Q&As, thought songs, whatever, is the person will say, okay, this is it. This feeling, there's this belief, this is what keeps happening, this is where I'm stuck, right? Something like that. And then the facilitator they won't always, but they may say something in the form of, okay, and who or what is aware of that? Who's noticing that stuckness right now? Who's moving away from the emotion? Who's resisting the emotion? Who's buying into the resistance? Who believes that resistance is real, solid, happening? And none of these questionings aren't to, this is important, these questionings are not to add a layer of cognitive dissonance that says they're not happening, right? And in a way, that's a form of dissociation, but all that really is just building another identity out of, or not an identity, but it's building another layer of conceptualization. And that's not what the point is with asking these questions. And it can go down that road. That can be misinterpreted. The question is to really look for 1 second, to really look for 1/2 of a second or 1/10 of a second. What is it that knows that there's a thought that says, I'm afraid right now? What is it that knows that my narrative about being the controller, the manager, the suffering one, whatever it is, what is it in this moment that either believes or doesn't believe that and seems to be believing it right now, right? What is it? Who or what is that? Where is it? Go to it. Go to it. And then seeing what happens when you go to it, right? And I have to use words, but it's not an it. I'm not going to lead you to some, what I won't do in this is lead you to some conclusion to give you a term for it. Like it's called awareness or formless awareness or consciousness or being with a capital B or I am sense. Like I don't want to do that because you don't need that. You don't need to label it even as it's realized. You don't need to label. There's no label needed here. It's really about pure experience. Pure experience. So what is it that's aware of whatever your struggle is right now? What is it that allows you to even be aware at all that there's a thought, that there's a feeling, that there's an emotion, a sensation, pain, physical pain, an avoidant pattern, an indulgent pattern? What is that seems to be aware of that, right? And again, the key is what happens after you ask the question, or even as you ask the question, and what doesn't happen. Sometimes this is described, the mechanism of this is described as, if you can be aware of it, then you aren't it, right? If the storyline is saying, I'm in fear that if I do this, if I let go too much, I'll go crazy. If I let go too much, I won't be able to take care of my family. I'll collapse. I'll disappear. I'll go, whatever, right? That's the thought. And if I say, okay, that thought's been there for 5 years or 10 years or 30 years, so what? The thought. But who or what is aware of it? What makes it possible to even know that thought is there? And you may notice something. It may seem insignificant, or it may seem very significant, but you know it's not the thought. You know it's not that story, that narrative that's spinning around in the mind at the moment. And so a lot of times this is described as, if you notice anything that's not that thought, that's aware of it. it's kind of like proof that that isn't you, that that doesn't actually define who and what you are. That description's good, but it's not the whole story. Because if taken to the extreme, that can become dissociative. I'm not this, I'm not that, like the neti-neti approach. Again, that's probably valuable, but it can be dissociative at some point. It can be counterproductive. Because then you'll just identify with what you're not. It's still identity. Instead, take a really good look at what's actually happening when you ask the question. What is here that is just not contingent upon thoughts in any way at all? What happens? Do you feel something? Does your mind say, oh, I got to write this down, I just figured something out? Do you have a strong emotion, fear response? Whatever happens is perfect. It's the point. That is the point of what we're doing. I could say it's the next barrier or the next fixation or something, but it may not feel fixated and it may not feel like a barrier, but it's the next appearance that is the next breadcrumb. Continue to clarify your insight. And if it's something along the lines of the feels, then you're just called to feel it in that moment, not to conclude about it or say, "Oh, that's not it. That's an emotion." And let me keep asking the question: Who am I? What am I? What's aware of the emotion? If it's an emotion, feel it. Just go right into that. Right? An emotion is not. It's physical, right? You feel the emotion. Hopefully, you may not at first, but at some point it'll become very clear that it's a physical experience, not a cognitive experience. So if that occurs, feel it. That's your I'll say it's your gateway emotion. If we start talking about like archetypal energies, which you'll learn about later in the week, or you'll hear about later in the week from James, but it's a barrier emotion or a gateway emotion. Same thing. So feel it. Maybe it's time to feel absolute fear if you have been avoiding it. Feel it. Maybe it's time to feel rage, anger if you've been avoiding it. You'll know because it'll come up. It'll show up. It'll pop up. You'll feel it. It'll inhabit your body. And let it move through. Sit with it as long as you need to. Now, other times, you may question or challenge a narrative or a sort of, I'm going to say an identity. You'll challenge an identity that's a cognitive identity. Like, okay, here's a common one I hear. I've been at this for 15, 20 years, 30 years even. I've been meditating. I've gone to lots of retreats. And I just can't really let go. Or I can't really get there. Or I can't wake up. Whatever it is. It doesn't really matter what that is. What matters is that there's something that really believes that I've done all the things I can do, and for some reason it just hasn't happened for me. Right? Now, in that case, again, we could say, hey, can you sense something that believes that? Or doesn't believe it? But it's not that. It's not that narrative. Like, we're just trying to drive a little tiny wedge in between the thought narrative and the sense of that which actually does not care about that narrative at all, doesn't buy into it, doesn't believe it, doesn't even disbelieve it. It's completely transparent to it. Yeah? And once you taste that, what'll often happen is you'll notice that you tasted it. You'll notice you tasted that purity that which is not bound by the story, no matter how dense and real your story feels, right? You'll actually taste that. You'll be like, oh yeah, okay. And what happens next? But, right? The next thought comes. Yeah, but I've had that before too, and I've had the tastes, and right, and then the story starts back up, which is what? One more thought, just one thought. Yeah. So what happened there? This is what you're called to look into, investigate. What's real? What's unreal? Where are you in that equation? Where are you in that sequence? Are you in that sequence? A thought that says, no, 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 it's definitely real. 20 years, I've meditated, I'm being extreme, right? 19 hours a day and done 75 Adyashanti retreats and done ayahuasca. I've met every god there is, through my ayahuasca journeys, and had 5-MeO DMT, and I've had my identity obliterated. Like all of it, right? And yet, something hasn't happened yet. Haven't gotten there. Haven't woken up. Haven't let go. Whatever it is, right? Solid, super solid. That person believes it. They want me to believe it. And then I say, okay, fine. Is there anything here in your experience at all that just doesn't believe it, buy it, is not contingent upon that whole belief, story, thought, identity? And they know. They're like, yeah, for sure. And I might even ask, does that have an opinion on this story you just told me? No. Of course not. No. And I'm like, great. Rest there. Stop there. Stop. They're like, oh, cool. But you know what always happens after this? You know how many times I've had this conversation with people? It's so funny, right? Okay. I'm not doing this to make fun of people. I'm doing it to illuminate the way the mind functions. What just happened there? Right? What's real? The story that's so compelling and so convincing, or the gap, or the story when it's told again? What's real? That's the most interesting question of all for me. What's most real? What if you stop looking for any identity, but actually just look at what's actually happening? Don't have any conclusion about identity, no identity, self with a capital S or no self, anatta, Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta. Forget all that stuff. Just look. Look at what's actually happening. Is the thought real? The story, the narrative? Or the gap? That which does not give two hoots about the story, no matter how many times it's told. I don't know how much your body reacts to the story. It doesn't change the nature of that which is conscious right now in all of us. Untainted, unblemished, totally neutral. Once you taste it, to put it in a bit of a dramatic way, you've been given the ultimate gift. You've been handed the ultimate gift by the universe into your palm of your hand. What are you going to do with it? You're going to keep buying into those stories, narratives? Or are you going to let go more and more and more, which is not a doing. It's a non-doing. It's a staying with what you've been given, realized, shown. And part of that is being willing to feel whatever comes. Stay right here. Everything that needs to be felt will come. Stay here. Don't leave retreat. That's another narrative. Oh, I feel great at retreat. But I'm going to leave, and then, it all goes away, collapses. I'm unenlightened when I leave retreat. Don't leave. Don't leave this moment. Don't go into the future. Don't go to the past, because there isn't one. Papaji would say the past is a graveyard. Future is also a graveyard. So don't leave this. You all know this, without exception. Everyone here is absolutely 100% in touch with what I'm talking about. Because you can't not be. Doesn't matter how many doubts are shooting through your mind. You're not out of touch with it. It's just that it's so close. It's so close you don't have to find it, navigate it, get confused about it, reject it, accept it, desire it. It's too close for all that. So there's no activity here. Can you imagine being that free that you don't have to do anything? And it just happens. Everything just happens. Body stands, moves, walks, pees, poops, goes to sleep, wakes up, eats, laughs, cries, dances. And you're totally free. Free, free, free. Free as that, free as all those movements. Free as any emotion that appears. Because you don't go anywhere. You don't move out of this. There is no out of this. And importantly, even resistance will show up here. But resistance is not the same thing as buying into a narrative. Resistance is a physical experience that somewhere along the line, when we were maybe between a year and a couple of years old, somewhere along the line, we believed one thought that said, I can't handle that. I can't handle that physical experience of resistance. So I need to go inward into this inner world, create an inner world. The first thought you believed, maybe, something like that. When that happened, you forgot something. You forgot what every lower animal knows. It cracks me up that, in some sense, humans consider themselves above animals. The animals didn't forget this. They know they can experience anything fully. We forgot that. And then we think we're smart because we forgot that. At some point, right, we all started believing that when the experience of resistance, energetic resistance, comes into the body, arises, that I can't handle that. This is such a deeply rooted thought that you're not thinking it consciously. You won't notice it as a thought as such that says, I can't handle this. Instead, there's a whole bunch of other thoughts built on top of that. You also have forgotten. And on top of that, other thoughts, layers and layers of identity. And at some point, there's the cognitive surface, right? But that's why we use these really poignant, powerful, incisive, scalpel-like questions to go all the way down to the bottom of it. That's the power of self-inquiry. It's the power of inquiry. You can go all the way to the bottom. And at some point, you'll realize that even the resistance is no problem at all. And I'll just say it this way, when you have a good relationship with resistance in that way, then you don't have to go, you don't have to leave. You don't have to leave anymore. Where's leave? Leave is La La Land. Leave is the graveyard of the mind. You just don't have to leave here. Stay here. And here is everything. Nothing at all. It's uncharted territory. The great unknown. The mystery. friend Lisa Carnes said to me once, I didn't realize how afraid of the unknown I was, but when I finally let go into it, I realized it's what I always wanted. It's life's gift, the unknown. So this is the unknown. It's not your future. It's right where you are. It's the unknown. What else would you ever want than this? So simple, so accessible. Even accessible doesn't make sense. There's no need to access it. It's here. Don't leave it. Don't leave. I feel like I could just say the same thing over and over because it does take, I think, some repetition to really to really drop this into the physicality, into the energetics of whatever this is. That it is as simple as staying here. You already know how to do that. There's a thought in your mind that's like, oh, I wish I knew how to stay here. Don't worry about it. That's a thought. You already know how to stay here. I promise you do. That's not the challenge. The challenge is the belief that says, I can't handle the next emotion. And then underneath all of it, I can't handle the resistance, that electric. And guess what? That resistance, it's not resistance. It's only resistance when it's modulated by the mind and feels like identity. It's life force. It's lightning. Energy. It's all the mass in the universe. Life force. It's amazing. But you can't control it. Never will. No one ever has. So you gotta surrender to it. And that will happen sooner or later as this realization deepens for everyone. At some point you will surrender to the energetics of this. Because there's no other choice. Fully. At every level. And you'll be free. And you'll realize freedom is natural, not mystical. It's not for the elite. Not only for those rare enlightened people. It's your birthright. Freedom is natural. Freedom is naturalness. And naturalness is freedom. So if you followed that meandering conversation I just had with myself, and you all, the simple willingness to really look at what's happening is all this is about. But look closely. Look closely. How well do you know your own thoughts? I don't mean the narrative of your thoughts. I mean what your relationship with your thoughts is. How well do you know it? Is there something you're not seeing about it? Look at it with a different lens. Look at it from a slightly different angle. What is your relationship with thought? Such that you can believe a narrative that is locking you in the smallest, tightest, most suffocating mental box. And yet you keep feeding it. Why? Look at it. There's a reason. And it's yours to discover. It's a beautiful discovery. And all of this happens here, by the way. You don't have to leave here to do these investigations. Just look close. Closely. With curiosity. The trust will come with time. We have a sort of doubt mass, right? Like so many doubts in the mind early on, for sure. We're just awash with doubt. We identify with doubt. I identified with doubt for sure. And strangely, that can parade as like being smart, clever, but yeah, a lot of doubt at first. So trust can be a little challenging with this at first, for sure. Uh, I don't know what gets us through that. It can be different things for different people. For some people, it's devotional. Some people, the devotional thing of looking at somebody as an ideal, whether it's a bodhisattva or an image or a person or whatever it is, like something that just says, okay, there's a way to get through this because that person seemed to do it or whatever. It could just be, for me, I think it was some kind of stubbornness, honestly. I was just stubborn. I didn't want to suffer anymore. Curiosity. But yeah, you'll have a lot of doubt at first, and that's okay. The doubt does not, the doubt doesn't actually undermine inquiry. What undermines inquiry is not doing inquiry because you're lost in your thoughts, voluntarily lost in your thoughts. When you're here, the inquiry is pretty natural. It's not a doing; it's just happening. There's a curiosity is always here. Inquiry is just reminding people of their natural curiosity. How can you not be naturally curious of who you are, what's happening, of the way reality is functioning right now? How can you not be curious of that? Of course you are. Everyone is. You're more curious about that than you're curious about anything that you think you're interested in. I promise you. You're more curious about the nature of reality as it's experienced right now than you are about safety, relationship, other people's stories, drama, pastimes, work, all of it. All those things are great, but you're more curious about this naturally. You have to be, because it's reality. It encompasses all those things. It encompasses everything. And you're given such an incredible gift of the ability to inquire in this way, self-inquire, inquire into the nature of truth. What a gift that is, that you can actually do that. That's why I love this setting. I love these environments and these people who come to this, right? Strangely, still astounds me that the vast majority of people walking the face of the earth are not interested in this. But even them, they are. There's some level they really want to, but there's a lot of fear. There's a massive fear, right? Doubt and fear. But this group, these groups of people, what we have in common is we're willing to look closely at what's actually happening. We're willing to be uncomfortable. We're willing to forego, especially the comfort of narratives and even like group enforced narratives, which are really binding, very strong. I mean, they can make people do horrible things, right? You can see it. So group dynamics that strengthen narratives, your narrative or the group's narrative and so forth, they're very binding. There's a lot of takes a good amount to like step out of that, and everyone here is doing that by being here, if nothing else. So I have tremendous respect for everyone here for that, and brother and sisterhood for people who want to investigate this. But it's a simple act, investigation. Really just look. Ask a couple questions when it makes sense to ask those questions. And don't go anywhere. For God's sake, don't leave. Don't leave this. Right here.